easy answer for that, actually.
Okay.
So we thought we had something interesting, but before we decided to do anything about it, actually, back the story up. I met with Lucas Carlson from PHP Fog. Do you guys know that guy? AppFog recently raised $8 million around here. Well, I met with him last January, and he told me the story about how he had this idea for this great product, and instead of going off and building it, he put up this great landing page, a splash page on the web, and he put it out on some websites, Hacker News. And the next day, he got 800 signups to this thing. So he quit his job and went off and built the product. And I just happened to, after that coffee, have lunch with my co-founder, Ben Ellis, and I told him this story, and he said, well, I've got this idea I've been kicking around, which is Cloudability, and we did the same thing. We built a site, we put it out there, and we got 200 signups. I guess there's something happening here. And so for us, it's always been, it was about validating the pieces that are needed and wanted before we put it out there, and it just happened to be the right time for it.
Anyone else have a timing story where their timing was either right on or right off and how they knew?
My example is probably a little bit different because I was trying to develop my product a little bit more in stealth. So we didn't set up a website. I didn't go talk to my competitors because I'm in the industry, right? So I didn't want to go tell them what I was working on. But I also had 20 years of experience in that industry, so I knew what I was going to be my best customer. So I was trying to develop this from my own perspective. But what I used was a parallel. I was looking at the consumer marketplace and how it was changing with iPhone and iPad and the Android and all of that stuff. And I was using that as a parallel. I was saying, if all of this is getting to the traction it's getting, why can't all of that work just in another area? And even if you looked at all the web stuff and all of that stuff and all of where that was all going, and the bottom line is 100 million people a day use a vending machine in the U.S., and there is nothing there for them other than to push A1. And so I built it up kind of a little bit more from the foundation, but just using it as a parallel, saying, if 100 million people went to a website every day, it'd be worth a lot. And if I look at it and I go, well, I think we have something here if we can just make it work. So kind of approach it a little bit different.
Yeah. And I've got a kind of almost opposite thing, is that this device is possible now because technology is getting smaller and cheaper, and that is the positive timing, but the tracking market is exploding at the same time, so you're going one of our biggest questions from investors and so on is what about the competition? What if Garmin comes out with this thing? So you've got to develop some amount of unique capabilities within what you're doing. And what we've decided is that we've got something that is very bicycle oriented. That's still an unserved market at this point in time, but we also are developing it in conjunction with the community database that we're building, because there's databases out there for stolen bicycles, there's trackers out there that are not designed for bicycles, but if you could develop this whole system and get it so that bicyclists, when they're out there and they come near a stolen bike, it pops up on their screen, or their friend who had a stolen bike can notify everybody that they know, all their cyclist friends, that their bike was stolen. Then you start developing eyes on the street, and you're combining with also the other industry that's out there, which is geolocation, that is going nuts. So it's a balancing act. You're right at the right time, but you're right at the right time when everybody else is coming into the market, so you've got to find a unique aspect.
Okay, good. So the idea, we've spent a lot of time talking about the actual idea. Some people say the happiest day of their life was the day they started their company and the day they sold their company, right? But there's a lot of space in between there. So, what happens when that initial euphoria passes and you hit a wall? Think about some of those walls that came early, and how did you bust through?
Persistence.
Okay.
It goes back, you got to validate to yourself, you got to validate with other people, customers, and then you just got to keep driving it. And
Have you ever been wrong, Ken?
Every day.
Are entrepreneurs ever wrong?
Yes, but you got to make quick decisions, and then you evaluate them, and you change them when they're wrong, quickly. And you just keep going. I mean, you talk about walls. I have a good day and a bad day every other day. There's, constant successes, and then later there's, some customer who is doing something that you think is crazy, and you're like, I can't believe they're going this direction. And you learn from what they're doing, and you just keep working and trying to make your product better. I mean, this goes back to the previous question. We had our first customer 6 months before we released our product. We were showing them demos of what it could be with, like, real data inside a Windows program. So it just persistence, listening to your customers, listening to your team, improving every day.
Okay, good. So what other walls? Anybody encounter, a money issue early, a team issue early, some other barrier, regulatory or other barrier early in the game that looked like it might call it all off?
I mean, I'd say that I hope I wouldn't be the only one, but every team I've ever worked on, we kind of always hit these team issues where I think when you've got a team that's really passionate and they're all, you get a bunch of people in a room who are excited and smart people who want to build a product, and you're going to, we run into things all the time. So, I mean, I can think of a couple times when we were at major loggerheads, and it was one of those moments where we had to, pardon the expression, but shit or get off the pot, make a decision one or the other. And I think that, the sign of a good team and, is somebody a group who can come together and with massively different opinions and find a way through and end up, a better company as a result. You asked, what are some things that help get past those places? And for us, it really was having good mentors and having good advisors that we could call upon and say, okay, here's what's happening, now what? And they say, go over there, do that. And you're like, oh, of course, I hadn't thought of that. And you move forward.
Sometimes it's just a fresh pair of eyes on a problem that you're so deep into it, and maybe it isn't even rocket science. Maybe someone just has to let you let you hear yourself say it out loud, and realize in the process, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So what about other walls? I haven't heard anyone mention money as a wall.
Money is a wall.
But what do we do about money walls?
We just got rejected by one potential investor, so, that was I had a plan. I was like, okay, here we are. We're getting all this publicity where our product is really getting out there. Now we're going to get this. And it's like, what? You didn't get that? Wait a minute. So you have to pull back and go, all right, well, we're opening a funding round, but it takes money to do this. We've got a marketing team, a manufacturing team, a development team, all working on equity right now. But that can only go so far. You need to be able to pay these guys.
Well, I hear there's a lifetime limit of one no when you're an entrepreneur. You only hear it once, and then everyone else has to say yes. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that how that works? How many no's do we hear between yeses?
996, I think. Calculated once I've presented to over 1,000 investors.
Wow.
Going through angel groups.
You must be really good at that.
Wow.
That's why we called you the hardest working man in fundraising. Right?
It's persistent.
Yeah. So, again, this isn't the total participation part, but just as a show of hands, how many people think they could take, the 950th no? Okay, this is a crowd of entrepreneurs. So, how do you get out of bed the next morning excited about the next maybe no?
I'm going to show them they're wrong and they should have invested. That's how I get up in the morning.
Yeah. All right. Other people, how do you dig deep and keep moving on? Because I think rejection is a big part of this game.
So probably a year and a half ago, when I was still toying with this idea, I actually presented to an OEN event. I think it was Seed Oregon or something at Backspace, and I got creamed. It was one of those places where they vote with the text message, and I got creamed. I mean, I had like half the votes of the next presenter, and I was confident in what I knew my business model was, and I knew what I needed. But I looked at it and I was like, why didn't they see that? Why don't, or what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? And at that time, I was focusing just on the nutrition and the advertising. And then it got me to think about it from a little bit broader perspective. I said, well, this is probably not a business model in itself. People don't want to pay for nutrition information, or there was no huge mandate at that. Now there's a federal law coming in place, but back then it was still kind of like we weren't sure where it was going to go. And what it really did force me to do was look at what I was actually doing, and I didn't give up on what I was doing. I just morphed it into something that would actually make more business sense, and added the cashless acceptance and all of the data and all of the other stuff into it. So anyways, I could have walked away from that saying, "Oh, toss this idea and let's go to the next thing," but instead I just looked at it and tried to say, I got creamed, but I want to know why, and how do I make it so next time I have a better chance.